Well, hello again, everybody. This is SQL Dan coming at you tonight with another question from the Snowflake SQL Message Boards. Tonight we're going to do something a little different, which is follow up on a question that we've done previously. It is Sunday, June 23rd, 2024, and I tackled this question last weekend, but the original questioner changed the data a little bit, and I think I could probably help this time as well. So I will post a link in this video to the question from last week and the video from last week, as well as to the current question. So you'll find all that in the description to the video, but I'll lay it out for you so you can see what's going on. So this question comes from Ron Kumar Narayanan, and it's titled Unpivot Using SQL and Retain the Order. And the challenge he has is he has a bunch of diagnostic codes, and he'd like to be able to load these into Databricks. So he has a few limitations as to functions he can use. And in particular, he wasn't able to use the qualify function that was suggested to him by Snowflake's star user Cesar Segura, and also he says that he can't use the pivot and unpivot functions there. So we're going to try to see if there's a way to solve this, and ultimately, of course, the answer, otherwise I wouldn't be doing the video, is yes, there is, but we'll do the pivot ourselves, and we'll make this work nice and easily. Anyway, so here's the question. He has this set of data right here that says input data. Okay, and then below he has what he'd like the output to be. And essentially, we have 4 different columns of diagnostic codes. And in the order that those appear, starting with its sequence number, okay, he'd like to capture a unique list of them. Essentially, the first time that any of these diagnostic codes appears in any of these columns, he'd like to capture those in the output table below. So say, for example, I actually have a way to demonstrate that here with this document right here. So here's his source, and I've highlighted in bold here the ones that he'd like to capture, and I'll show you those in the output here. So starting with sequence number 1, he has N42. So obviously that's the first time that we've seen that one, and so it goes here. Moving down to sequence number 2, he has N9903, N25511, and N62838. And that's the first time that each of these 3 has appeared. So he'd like those to appear in the output as well. So you can see down here, there's 9903, 2511, and 62838. Now the next one was N542. We don't pick that one up because we've already seen that one in sequence number 1 instead. Moving down to line 3, we have N25511 and N62838. And again, we've seen both of these in the prior line, so we don't pick up either one of these. And then moving down to line 4, N9903 we've seen before, N62838 we've seen before, but then N4040 is a new one for us, so we do want that one. So again, it's the ones that I have bolded here that he'd like to see. Now this could be done very easily if all of these were in a single column, which is why there's been some suggestions that he pivot the data first. But the fact that they're in 4 different columns makes this somewhat more challenging. But what I'd like to suggest here is the way that we can do this is to go ahead and use a CTE. We're not actually going to pivot the data, but we're going to mimic that pivot so that we end up with data that looks like the structure that you see in the lower right-hand corner here. So again, we had sequence number 001, and we have that here. And then these ones in this box here are the 4 from sequence 002. So you can see those read across here, but I pivoted them down like that, right? And then sequence number 3, there's those 2, and like that. So our objective here is to get it into this format. And then once we get it into this format, then it's simply a matter of finding the first time that each one of these occurs, and then we'll do that using the row number function, which is the way that we solved the problem last week when we attacked this problem as well. So the difference between what we're doing this week and what we did last week is that the starting data is formatted differently. So we essentially need to get our starting data to be formatted like we see in the lower right-hand corner, and then this thing becomes a piece of cake. All right, so let's switch over to Snowflake itself right here, and that's on this tab. And I've created a table that looks like his example, and that's what we see right here. Select star from diagnosis example, and I've ordered by claim ID and sequence number. So you can see there's the row with 1 on it, there's the row with 4, etc., right on through like that. So this is mimicking the data that he gave in his example. Now let's quickly put together a query that would select only those records from the diagnostic code 1 column. Okay, and that's what we see here in this query. On line 254, 255, we're just going to select those that appear right here in diagnostic code number 1. And when I do that, we see we've selected, you know what, we didn't get the order that I would prefer, just to keep things so that it's understandable. I'm just going to put an order by here so that you can see exactly what we ended up with. This order by is not necessary in the solution that we're going to do at all, but just to help you right now follow along, we'll put it in here, right? So there's all of the diagnostic code values from code 1, I should say, listed here and in the order they appeared. And just to go back, let's take another peek at that. So remember these values you see, 542, 9903, 25511, and 9903. Okay, so those are those right there. So that's wonderful. Then the next thing we need to do is write another query to select those that are from this column right here. And there are 3 of them, 25511, 62838, and 62838 again. Okay, and so that's going to look just like this query here, except now instead of selecting diagnostic code 1, we're going to select diagnostic code number 2. Okay, and so now you can see we've selected those 3, and there was a null in the first one right here. But we're on the way to doing kind of a manual pivot, you know, and I can add this order by here as well just to be consistent here. So let's see. We can remove this semicolon. There we go. Okay, so now that we've selected 2 of these, we can start to put this together so that you can follow what's going on a little bit better. And so now I'm going to remove the order bys that we had just for that. But we can take that query and we can put a union all with the next query down. And so we've selected all of them from column 1. And now we've selected all of those from column 2. And when we union them, we get one simple column with all 7, or actually 8, because there was a null as well, of those values in column number 1. Now I've still preserved the sequence number and the claim ID because we'll need those in order to figure out which order they appeared. So I've grabbed those and continue those in the code. Now this is still labeled as diagnostic code 1 because anytime you do a union, whatever the field names are from the very first query become the field names from the outputted query. So although this says diagnostic code 1, it's actually the combination of diagnostic code 1 and diagnostic code 2. But just in order to eliminate confusion, let's assign an alias to this one, diagnostic code, as so. Now again, whatever's in the first query in a union is what is going to be represented in the output. So I don't have to do that on line 257 as well. I now have my output with the diagnostic code, and I've still retained the others. So that's pretty much what we're going to do for all 4 of these. But there's one more piece that we would need to do, which is I need to know which of these came from column 1 and which of these came from column 2. And why do I need to know that? Well, let's go back again. Actually, let's go over here to the sample data again. I need to know which order these appeared in because my output needs to retain that order. So I want to make sure that I output 9903 before 25511, right? Because this one was in column 1 and this one was in column 2. But when I put them together in one column, I've lost my ability to know which ones they came from. So what I need to do also is to create like a pseudo column that tells me which one each of these came from. So you can see here in this PDF example I have here, I say, well, this 9903 came from code order 1. I created a column called code order, right? And it simply means that was diagnostic code 1. This is diagnostic code 2, this was 3, and this is 4, etc. So I need to get that into my query as well. So what I can do is I have this query already going right here, and let's see, just to put it in the same order that it is in the demonstration, I can hard code a number in that field. Right? So I know that everything that's selected in this top query came from field number 1 because that's what I'm selecting there. So I can hard code a 1 into there and just call it code order. It could be called whatever you'd like to call it, but I'm calling it code order. And then similarly, I can move down to this one and I can put a 2 there. And again, because I don't need to worry about aliases in anything except for the first query, I know it's going to have that alias, but this is going to have a 2 in that value, and it's going to tell me that every value I see came from diagnostic code 2. So let's run this query one more time here. And you can see how that's working. So now I'm able to know which ones came from column 1, which ones came from column 2, and also what was the sequence number that was on them. So you can see how this pivot is going to work now. Now, we've done 2 of the columns. His example has 4. I imagine, knowing what I know about diagnostic codes, that there are probably more than that, okay? But I can write a simple CTE that takes the values that we had in the examples that I had, and there were 4 here, right? And I can say select from CTE, and I've done the same thing that I did in the demonstration on each of these, selecting from column 1, column 2, column 3, and column 4, and assigning the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 to the code order. Well, now I have effectively achieved this that we see right here in the lower right-hand corner. And so now I have everything I need to find the first time that each one of these codes appeared. So that's what we're going to do now, is we're going to select from the CTE. Okay, and let's first of all keep the fields that we're going to want in the output. So we're going to want the claim ID, we're going to want the sequence number, so let's go ahead and hold on to those. Okay, and we're also going to want the diagnostic code. So let's put that down here. All right, but we also, now, as I said, we need to find the first time that appeared. So we're going to use the row number function. Now, a row number is a ranking function, right? But it doesn't allow for any ties. So there can only be one number 1. And in this case, our sort order is going to be fine that there would never be a tie anyway. But we say row number. Analytic function means we have the word over. Okay, and we want this logic to repeat for every claim ID. Okay, so every time, he only has one claim ID in his data set, but he'd certainly like to know when the next claim ID, we don't want these results bleeding between the two claims. Okay, and then we also want the ranking or the row numbering to occur for each value of diagnostic code. So basically this will tell us the first time that each diagnostic code appears in each claim. Well, at least it will partition out and it will provide the count. So that's our partition by. The next piece is the order by, and the order by is, let's go back over here and take a look one more time, sequence number first, code order second. Okay, and so we want it to be, use those two as our ordering to find the first time that each one appears, right? So we say sequence number, okay, order by that, and then by my contrived field of code order. And let's see, I got to spell order correctly. Good. Okay, and so we now have an analytic function to accomplish that. We don't need code order in our output, but I'm going to include it at least briefly just so we can look at it in the output to feel good about the results that we have. Okay, so now I'm going to run my CTE and the query that I'm doing on my CTE, and we've managed to do this without any pivots and without any qualify statements, so you should be good to go in Databricks, right? And these are not in any particular order right now. They're in kind of a database order. So let's just, for our own benefit, let's go ahead and put these in order as they are on my PDF, in order by claim ID. Now again, this order by does not impact the calculation of the row number. That row number is completely separate from this. It's just using what we see here, but the ordering I'm doing of the output records basically mimics what's going to happen in the row number. So when I do that, let's see. There we go. So we have 542. Oh, and then we got the null next here. So I guess I need also now to exclude the nulls. Okay, because what I want to do now is I want to select all of the ones that have a row number of 1 on them. And I think my order by, actually after claim ID, let's see. Yeah, let's go ahead and put that on there. So I was trying to think about which way would make it easiest to demonstrate this for you. But anyway, so you can see this is the output that he requested, the N542, the N9903, the N25511, the N62838, and the N4040. Let's take another look right here. Again, and there's his output right there. Let's go back to the original question. There's his output right there, and he did add an edit that I didn't call out to you earlier that says actually the fourth one should be N62838. So what you're seeing right here is not the actual output he wants. He wants 62838 before 4040. So there's a reason why I put it over here to keep that easier for you to see. Okay, so the only problem left for me to solve is that I didn't take into account any nulls right now. So we can handle that easily enough as well. And we can just say right here from the CTE where diag code is not null. And this will be our answer. Voila! There we have it. So now all he's essentially got to do is write an additional where clause condition that filters out and keeps only those where RN or row number equals 1. Now you might remember that we cannot reference an analytic function inside of the where clause because it's out of scope for this query right here, right? That's where a qualify statement would come in. But we can easily enough add this as our mid-step. we'll just call this step of our query our calc query. How about that? So calc as, right? And then we have another statement there. Okay, so before I add my where clause, let me just show you that I haven't changed the query at all. I put another layer in, but it's still identical at this point. So select star from calc. Okay, so there's our same output that we had before. And so now the only thing that we need to do at this point is in the calc, we can now add a where clause here that says where rn equals 1, and we don't even need that. We actually don't need any of those anymore. We just need, let's see. You know, I guess we do need one more row number in order to keep these in the right order completely, because I haven't kept track of the output that's going to happen right here. So I'm able to find the first one from each one. But like when there's two in the same sequence, or when there's two, actually, I guess this does work, doesn't it? If I keep the code order on here, sure, that'll work. So I have order by claim ID and sequence number, and the RN is 1 on all of them, so it's in the order by, but it really is irrelevant at this point. But by ordering by sequence number and code order, I did manage to maintain the same order. So yeah, that's great. So if I didn't want to keep these two, I could also go back and add another analytic function, but I'll leave that to user to figure out how to do that. And if you can't figure out how to do it, I actually did it in the video that I did last week for this as well. So you can take a look at that. So I know this explanation was a little bit longer because I wanted to be super detailed in how I handled it, because this user has posted this question several times with different variations. So I wanted to make sure I covered all the angles this time, and all the limitations that he's been experiencing with the tool that he's using for the querying. And I believe, my friend, that this is the answer that you're looking for. So I hope you give it a try. And for everybody else, I thank you for watching. If you have any comments on what I did or anything I said, please comment down below. Tell me if I got something wrong, or if I didn't explain something correctly. I'd love a chance to interact with you. If you like the content of this, I hope you'll like the video. And if you really like what I'm doing as I build up my Snowflake channel for you here, I hope you subscribe, because there's a lot more coming down the road. But that's it for now. This is SQL Dan signing off.